Thank you, everybody. Thank you, and welcome back here to Midnight Assembly. You know, it's a bit of a more somber feeling for tonight's show, as here in Washington, D.C., we are under occupation. It shouldn't come as any surprise, but you've probably seen it. National Guard units from all over the country have been sent here. They're walking the streets, they're armed, and they're showing a level of force and violence that's meant to intimidate people. Tourism is down, not just in Washington, D.C., but all across the country, due to a variety of actions that this administration has taken to create an environment of fear. It's dark times that we're living in. But again, the purpose of this show isn't to obsess and focus on those dark times, because that only leads to despair, which can then leave you feeling stuck and helpless and perhaps resolved not to do anything, right? What we're going to do tonight, like every night, we're going to look to the past, to another time when federal troops were in the city, ostensibly for the purpose of keeping the peace. So tonight's story is not about a war, rather about the people who had just come back from a war, only to be told, not yet. So let's take it back to the summer of 1932. Tens of thousands of World War I veterans marched on Washington, D.C. And they weren't storming the Capitol, they were sleeping next to it, camping out in huts and tents, waiting for a promise to be fulfilled. And they were doing this in the midst of the Great Depression, when over 5,000 banks failed, unemployment peaked at nearly 25%, and the stock market crashed by 89%. Think of stories like The Grapes of Wrath, Of Mice and Men, Cannery Row, and To Kill a Mockingbird. Are those all John Steinbeck books? All right. Well, what happened next? It's the kind of thing you won't believe is true until history reminds you of, oh yeah, that happened. So to guide us through the story, please welcome a man who once tried to land a role in Les Miserables by reading congressional testimony, my main man, Desmond Crowe. Thank you. This is Corporal Joseph Angelo, Meuse Argonne, 1918. He was awarded a Distinguished Service Cross for dragging his wounded colonel to safety under fire. That colonel was future U.S. General George S. Patton. 14 years later, Patton would lead a group of cavalry soldiers through the camp where Angelo was living. This is not historical symbolism, Marty. This is America in the midst of the Great Depression in 1932. They called it the Bonus Expeditionary Force. 20,000 veterans, men who had survived mustard gas and machine guns, marched to Washington asking for what they had already been promised, a bonus, scheduled for 1945. And they needed it in 1932. They brought their wives, their children, their hopes. They built a community from scraps in the Anacostia Flats, a city within the capital made of tents, wood, and willpower. There was no violence. There were speeches, camp kitchens, schooling for kids. They flew American flags over every shack they built. Congress debated and then denied them. President Hoover said the camps were unsanitary. He ordered them cleared. Oh wow, Desmond, what's happening? I feel like I'm in kind of a whirlpool, like I'm being taken back in time. This is crazy. Yes, Marty. This is something the French would call scène de l'histoire, a scene from history. I don't really like this, but all right. July 28th, 1932, Washington, D.C. at dawn. The Anacostia Flats stretch out like a makeshift neighborhood. 20,000 voices stirring to life. Coffee brewing over small fires, children's laughter mixing with the distant sound of the Potomac River. These aren't rebels or revolutionaries. These are men in their best clothes. The only clothes they had left. Medals pinned to worn jackets, discharge papers folded carefully in breast pockets. Some still carry the canes they've needed since Bayeux Wood. By noon, the summer heat is pressing down. Pennsylvania Avenue shimmers in the distance, the smell of dust and sweat and hope. Then, hooves. The thunder of cavalry, moving down the same street where these men once marched in victory parades. The acrid bite of tear gas cutting through the humid air. Shouts, the crash of tent poles falling, the terrible sound of a tank engine where there should be silence. Veterans who survived mustard gas now covering their faces with handkerchiefs. Children who came to see democracy at work, running from the democracy that wouldn't see them. By evening, the camps are ash. The promises, still smoke. This wasn't a battlefield in Europe. This was Washington, D.C. You said this wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't. And yet, if it were, it would be too on the nose. We speak of sacrifice, we speak of duty, but when the uniforms came off, those men were told their service was too early and their suffering too late. They didn't come with guns. They came with discharge papers and resumes, and they were treated like a threat. Patton didn't just clear the camp. He cleared the mirror in which America saw itself. And what came of it? In the moment, nothing but ash. Hoover lost re-election, but those men left with scars that no battle had given them. 4 years later, another bonus bill hit the desk of President Roosevelt, and he signed it, which proved that any action could spawn a seed, which, when tended to, can grow into justice. History, Marty, is full of Hamlets, those who hesitate, who plot, who scheme. But these men were the ensemble. They were the chorus. They were the crowd that never got a soliloquy. But it's their silence that echoed loudest. And the next time you hear someone say, that protest didn't change anything, remember the bonus army. And remember what happened when the curtain closed and the lights came back on. Every tragedy requires an intermission, Marty. And the bonus army was America's intermission, a moment to reflect before the next act began with different players. So what role will you play in this great drama we find ourselves in? The lead, supporting actor, just a face in the crowd, a bit part? It doesn't matter which. We all have a role to play in this drama we call the United States of America.